Welcome to Guardians of the Data. I'm your host, Ward Balzerzak. Each episode will explore the passions, expertise, and real world experiences of security leaders who are helping the future of data security and governance. Guardians of the Data is made possible by support from Centra. To learn more about our AI powered data security platform, please visit centra.io. Let's dive in. Welcome back to another episode of Guardians of the Data. Today's guest is a seasoned leader with over 2 decades of experience in cybersecurity and IT. Currently, the enterprise data protection lead at Marathon Petroleum Corporation. Please welcome Hans Vargas.
Ward, thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm looking forward to the conversation.
I'm excited that you accepted my invite. So, in your professional opinion, what's the biggest challenge organizations are facing when it comes to data security?
I would tend to say if you don't know what you need to protect, that's a problem. And I think sometimes that leaks to the fact that we need to highlight that to leadership and or the business. And sometimes that could be equally challenging. Why you are here to protect this information. And sometimes it's because we haven't had an issue before, but the potential that the information could be detrimental to an organization could be very bad very quick, especially now that many organizations are embracing cloud and we're sharing information with third parties more than ever. So
Yeah, totally agree. You hit on a few things there, all kind of related, right? About, what are we doing? Why are we doing it? Why are we here? I know personally, joining a few organizations, I was hired by someone for a reason, right? The CISO, director, VP, whatever. So certainly they got the mission statement, right? They had a need and said, hey, we need Ward or someone like Ward to join. Where I always kind of had not necessarily difficulty, but shoot, yeah, sometimes difficulty was talking to the other folks within the business, right? Other stakeholders. Here I am. Here's what I'm doing. Here's why you and I need to be best friends. Have you found the same difficulty in your position?
I certainly have. And I believe the key is that conversation that sometimes it's not there because maybe it's us thinking we know that we are important to the organization, to the business, and we don't communicate that value to IT or directly to the business. We say, hey, we kind of have an idea, but we've been collaborating with other teams for data discovery. We see the data, wherever that is. It's either unstructured data, structured data. We see the movement of that data. We see the logs going in and out. We understand behavior of the user or identities. Let's call it identities. It's to be a non-human account, and we can help in that process. Tell us how we can help you, not only better identify your sensitive data, but also how to better protect it. We need to understand what is that you consider sensitive. And I think sometimes it's easy to do with when it's clear regulations like PCI, PII, or any regulatory data, but it's a little more difficult or challenging to identify something that might not be as easy to identify. So I think that conversation with the business or let's call it data owner, it's very important. And sometimes maybe we're not quite there having those discussions with them directly.
I like that. I like that you named it the data owner, and I think that's a good way to break the ice, in my opinion. Instead of just calling somebody a stakeholder, right? They don't really understand necessarily, like, okay, I'm a stakeholder in what? What am I doing here? Why am I here? And changing that. I mean, that term has been around for a long time, right? Data owner. I just don't think it's used enough. So sitting down with the data owners, getting them to understand why you're there. How do you recommend folks do that? Right. Because I think that's probably, I know it was for me, kind of a daunting task, right? You join an organization or you step into a role. Congratulations, you're here. Now you got to go to the next step. What's your suggestion for that next step?
Maybe let me use an example. Have you? I mean, many of us maybe moved, from our first home to our second home, And I guess I'm just going to start with data discovery. And once you start putting things in boxes or uncovering things that you have to move, you start questioning, do I need this? Do I, when was the last time I used this? Or, hey, these are things that we no longer need. So the same thing could be applied to ownership of data. And I think in many cases, data storage has been cheap for the longest time. So we just keep everything. And we don't understand that, or we need to transfer or communicate to the data owner that having or storing or keeping data, even though it could be outdated, 3, 5 years, it could be still sensitive for the organization. It could be risky to the organization because if you're in the news saying data was leaked, nobody cares if that data was leaked and that data is old. It's the fact that you expose customer data, employee data, even your secret sauce to the world. So I think maybe not necessarily put it in that scenario, but communicating that to whoever owns the data, say, hey, you might need to clean up. We might need to help you. We have tools to discover this data to tell you you have data that's 15 years old, and it could be very old data, but it could be also data that could be in some ways used against you. Should I be disclosed or exposed to the outside of the organization? So you don't know what you have until you start packing it. So discovering that data and showing it to the business, saying, "Hey, you have this much data. This is where it is," and or maybe even getting some of the requirements, saying, "Tell me what is this? What is sensitive to you? What it means to you?" Because it could be completely different. It could be intellectual property, it could be a pricing formula, it could be a location, or it could be how it could be descriptive of a process. So I think that is in itself understanding what is sensitive to a specific organizations is key. And again, going back to the conversation, right? So if you're not engaging on that conversation, you're probably never going to know how you can better protect that data.
Totally agree. I think back a few jobs ago, I was having a conversation with an investments department within the company, and introduced myself. Right, here's what I'm doing. Here's why I'm doing it. And I had the conversation you're describing. Right, what is your sensitive data? And I got some of the basics. Oh, we've got some pricing information. We've got some of this. We got some of that. Um, I said, "Okay," right? I had a place to start. I had a place to start. But as I started doing some discovery, going on what you were saying, discovering data, I started finding some other interesting tidbits. And I think a lot of, data security folks probably do when they're doing that. So I went back to them and said, "Hey, what about this? What about that?" And I feel like that was an eye-opening exercise for that group, right? Because they started saying, "Oh, oh, you found that? Okay." So you said, meet, build a relationship, doing scanning. You're gonna find stuff.
Yes.
How do you recommend having those conversations? Because I know personally, I felt those conversations were almost more difficult than, "Hi, how are you? What is your sensitive data?" Because now it's really taking a step back with something and saying, "What about this?" It's like pulling out the photo album. "I found this picture of you. What are you doing there? Where were you? Why aren't you smiling? I found this other picture of you. Who are those people in the background?" Right? It's almost showing them something, but trying to get them to remember or opine on what it is and what its sensitivity is.
I think it's always a challenging scenario because you're coming almost as an external, a foreign agent to an organization or a department, and then you are auditing what their information is and asking questions, and maybe they haven't been accustomed to answer. And I think it's important for them to know that you're not there to hurt them; you're there to help them. And maybe as silly as it is, I don't know if you've seen some of those helping a hoarder uh, TV shows. where a team comes and basically it scans through the entire home and they say, and there are some requirements like anything older than this, anything here, anything that is, broken needs to be pitched. And but there are some other things that they say, hey, I want to keep my any picture I want to keep, or at least I want to review. If you find a golden ring, please let me know because it's missing, or it's my grandpa's I don't know, my military symbol. Those things are tough and they're very emotional sometimes because you're coming and you have obviously a different lens than the owner of the data, but you're trying to help them to get to a better place. And again, it's a silly example, but you don't know necessarily what you're coming across, but you obviously have the idea you want to help them to get to a better place. And that better place is when you get rid of things that are older and nobody uses, nobody has access in a while. We want to help you identify things that we need to be, instead of being in a box in the middle of the living room, it needs to be put in a safe, perhaps, because I don't know, it's the grandpa's passport or discharge from the military or grandma's whatever, right? And those things are precious. I want to keep it in a different place. And I think that process, our teams can be of help because we come with tooling, we come with a team, we come some level of expertise that is going to assist them to be maybe reduce the number of files they're keeping. Maybe move all that to a storage in the cloud, so it's archived. Some of the stuff could be easily accessible, is to be in the garage, or some of that's going to be in a storage somewhere else.
Yeah, actually, I don't think that was a silly analogy at all. In fact, when you were talking before about like data retention and old data, that was a picture that was formulating in my brain. The pack rat, right? Or the hoarder, not the pack rat. Like just stuff is everywhere. It's sprawled. It's a mess. You got rats crawling in there. Hopefully, you don't have rats in your data, but it's it's crazy. So I think that's a perfect analogy for an organization that hasn't had I'm going to expand it past data security. I'm going to call it data governance as well, right? A data governance team, data security to, and I love your other analogy of, hey, I'm going to put this in a box or I'm going to put this in the safe, right? That's a perfect analogy for data security controls and different data repositories. Um, Okay, so you come in, you have the discussion with the data owner. You're starting to get a feel for their hoarding of data. Um, I think something that I've certainly struggled with, and I'm going to guess some of our listeners have as well, is getting across and getting buy-in for the idea of data retention and actually following that. Have you had the same difficulty?
Well, not really, because maybe I cannot relate to all the use cases, but in my experience, I I enjoy environments that have very clear regulatory an understanding of what is a record. Let's put it that way. Financial services, even my current company, the legal or the law department has defined what needs to be kept for how long. So it's well defined. My concern sometimes is for the information that is not fitting that category. So it's basically nobody knows how long you need to keep it. In some cases, data governance is not mature enough. So I think that's where the problems could be, where nobody knows how long should I keep, so I should just keep it forever. And in many cases, even with efforts of digital transformation, that could be a challenge because you're moving things to the cloud. And then instead of purging, everybody says, okay, just I'll clean it up later. You know how that goes. I'll clean it up later means I'm never going to clean it. I just prefer you to move everything. And we need to communicate the risk of that to the owner of the data. And we need to escalate this to leadership, saying if we would just move this to the new repository, it's never going to be cleaned up. So we also can offer some solutions, right? We can do some scanning, we can do some metadata searching, say, or anything older than this. We're going to obviously go through the process of disposition of that data, which means that you have to be, if you step back a little bit, you said, what is our data governance? Is it strong enough? Can we define all the steps of the data lifecycle? So from creation to disposition and between. And I think that's important. Organizations need to think about how do we best, for the benefit of the company, define that early in the process. If it's not well defined, I encourage you to ask whoever is in charge. It could be many stakeholders. Could be legal. Could be a specific organization is designed for the management of data or information management in the organization. Obviously, me as part of the data protection, we are more interested to people understanding what is sensitive, how do I protect it, because I can't really protect everything. Because if you do protect everything, you have to raise the bar to everything. But if we understand what is critical for specific organizations or the company itself, then we can focus on those. And that's why I was mentioning data discovery leads to the conversation with the data owner. What is, now that we understand the data as a whole, what is sensitive to you, and that maybe escalates to what is sensitive to the company.
I like that. I like that. And I want to come back to the sensitivity, but I want to go back to something that you were saying before. And um, man, you said something so brilliant there. It was the data governance piece, right? That organizations, if they don't have that, they need to have that immediately. That's your first step, the cradle to the grave, or the creation to disposition, to use your phrasing there. I actually just had a conversation earlier this week with an organization, and they were looking to embark on a data discovery initiative, which I was like, all right, gold star, that's awesome. Let's figure out where your data is, certainly, what it is and all that. But I remember, really kind of going back to, like, once you find it, what are you going to do? What are your plans? And I could kind of hear a little bit in the voices that there was an uncertainty there, right? Not really sure. And I think that's where a lot of data security initiatives probably stutter step, is my opinion, right? They say, I have this problem. I'm going to get a tool. I'm going to deploy a tool, and I'm going to assume everything is going to fall in place, versus in parallel or before, I'm going to make sure that there's processes in place.
If I were some of our listeners are concerned about that, I encourage you to continue going the data governance route, because sometimes data governance not necessarily might reside within your purview or your organization. It might be another stakeholder. So I think as long as you are in constant communication with them, because maybe there's a dependency, right? They are an enabler to you, and I believe that's the case. If there is no strong data governance, then you're going to be not enabled to be able to do what you need to protect that data, especially nowadays. Think about, back in the day, data centers. You control the access to your data. It's within the castle and the mod type of environment. But now is your data is shipped to everywhere. It's a distributed data center somewhere. And then not only that, you are sharing that through APIs with third parties or fourth parties that you might not have controls over. So our data, understanding of where our data is, where sensitive data resides, and what access controls you have to protect that data, or even know that that data has been at risk, is more than ever important. I would say crucial to your business. So I would say that encourage you to have those conversations with whoever leads that data governance, because you are a part of it. If we would think of ourselves as a part of the data protection, cybersecurity, information protection, whatever your team is called, you are probably a member or stakeholder of that umbrella of data governance. And if you are not actively engaged on understanding your responsibilities, then there's going to be a disconnect, and that disconnect is going to lead to some, perhaps, the slowness to react when data is truly at risk.
Yeah, yeah, and I would actually argue it's definitely a two-way street on that, right? Like certainly data security team, again, my opinion, and it sounds like yours as well, heavily reliant on that data governance group, the processes, the things they're creating. In some cases, they may create like a CMDB around data, right? A data inventory, if you will, and data flows and all of that. But I would say, at least in my experience, it's definitely gone the other way as well, right? Like they're almost the trust and the builder, and we're the verifying side on the data security side because with like DLP tools and data discovery tools, I've certainly found things that folks didn't know about. And I would take it back to them and say, hey, you know about all those things, but I found this thing. Did you know about this application? Did you know about this database? Do you know about this data type? Or you brought up APIs, right? Like, did you know there's an API between, point A and point B? And I would say at least 50% of the time they didn't, right? And it was like, oh my goodness, thank you. And I fed them data, and it was really the scratching each other's backs with that.
There's so many opportunities to enhance security in our organization. I think you're right. Um, I think that's one of the benefits or the added positive things that we can bring, because that is added value. Because sometimes the data owner is not necessarily aware of this. Bringing this to their attention, I think, allows them to make better informed decisions. Even sometimes inform the requirements to protect that data. So, uh, and and I know we haven't touched this, but I will introduce the concept of, and many businesses are embracing AI and agentic AI nowadays. That's in some ways a way to accelerate perhaps the data loss, that data being exposed. Because, and I think painting that picture to them, not trying to scare them, because we want them to embrace that technology, is further going to put their information at risk. So I would say that sometimes we have a reactive, we have to put controls after the fact. But I think, and I argue, and as a recovering cybersecurity architect, I argue that the conversation about architecture of how to protect data should be one of the first things as part of onboarding an application. So as the business is thinking of doing a POC of an application, or how to connect data security, cybersecurity, information protection should be part of the conversation, because it's there where you can, as part of the what is called the birthplace of that connection or that architecture, it needs to be thought out. And sometimes it's after the fact, and that's a miss, in my opinion.
That is a key point that needs to be made for this episode. Hallelujah, Hans. I totally agree. Yeah, I mean, so many organizations, including ones I've worked for, they have a um, security architecture team, right, that does the security evaluation. They build out everything, but more often than not, they don't include data security expertise or even considerations in there. Outside of the basics, oh, the data must be encrypted. Okay, like yes, of course, and things like that. But I mean, that's so key, right? So, two amazing things you've said in this episode, right? Data governance, need that right off the bat. Including data security and security architecture consideration, stand up new things, amazing as well, right? We need those things. I want to go back to you were talking about understanding the data and its criticality, right? Going back to that hoarder analogy that we had. So I think in some cases that relates to the relationship with data governance, right? I think that helps with understanding. Um, when that group may be missing or not knowing everything, do you have any recommendations to kind of break down those walls and help data owners understand the criticality, or maybe lead them to making their own determinations of the criticality of data?
In my view, is very simple as having those conversations and having identified the key points of contact within the ownership of that data and the data owners themselves. Sometimes it's not necessarily the top leadership. Sometimes it's the practitioners, and just asking the question, what would happen if this information gets out? You know, in not all the cases, this information, you know, it could be embarrassing. It could be detrimental. It's our pricing formula. It's our, I don't know, our specific way that we do. It's our, it's our routing information, depending on what industry you are. It could be our, uh, you name it. So it could be, you could be in an industry that is managing customer data, right? It could be a big deal. They could be, you could be fine because of the industry you are, because you are handling or mishandling customer data. It could be also employee data, right? You have a large number of employees, and their information get leaked. And sometimes it could be not necessarily your fault. It could be a third party, but you're going to be the responsible entity. So I think that painting the risk, and I think that's where the risk organization comes to help, because you can onboard them to say, help me understand, help me convey the potential risk of this information being exposed. And it's not necessarily the work always of cyber, because cyber sometimes it's kind of the ones who say no. Well, we've been known to be the ones who say no all the time because we want to be cautious and protect. And we also need to be the enablers, but the enablers have to go with open eyes. It's like, we want to help you to go fast. There are some guardrails that we need to put in place for you to go, to bump the sides, but it continue going. And I think if they understand that we're not there to slow them down, we're not there to slow progress or um, disincentivize innovation, perhaps, I think we have a huge opportunity to help the business to move forward. Because if you think really, in the last 20 years, any company now relies more and more on IT systems to function. You know, if we don't have email, as simple as that. If we don't have the way to process, if we don't have availability and network connectivity, the business comes to a halt. Not all the instances is that, but maybe you still can do the operations on the end. But if you don't have a way to invoice, we don't have to set orders to delivery, you know. And I think that's what the business needs to understand. We are an enabler of of whatever function of the business is doing, and they need to see us as a partner. And I think once that clicks, they are going to come to us timely. They're going to ask us to provide feedback and be part of the architecture design, and also to tell them, hey, it's not that we don't want you to do it. Maybe we need to put these controls in place to be able to make up for some uh, requirements that either the vendor or the situation is not allowing at this point.
Yeah, yeah, and I agree. I'm curious. So I saw an interesting post on LinkedIn earlier this week, and initially I saw it and I scrolled by, and it was one of those posts that it caught my eye enough that I scrolled back, right, and I was looking at it, and it's a long post, but to sum it up, and I'm curious your thoughts. That's why I'm framing it up here. The post essentially was about the CIA triad, right? Confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And the post was saying that as security professionals, most folks only concern themselves with the C, confidentiality, right? Most security things is protecting, data in this case from getting out. That's confidentiality. But the argument in the post was we are not being good business enablers, but because we're not thinking about integrity with what we're doing of the data in this case, and also the availability of it to keep business rolling and whatever else. So, with that, what do you think? What are your thoughts? I'm kind of putting you on the spot, I know, but any thoughts about that?
I tend to agree with that. We sometimes focus a lot on the confidentiality aspect of it, like access control, um, who should have access to that and shouldn't, access reviews. But I think if we don't think of the other aspects of it, we're also doing a disservice to the business. Talking about integrity, sometimes I think, not sometimes, I think lately it's been a discussion of because of ransomware and attacks to companies. There's an emphasis on the integrity of that data, right? So understand that when that data is being modified or potentially encrypted, not by you, uh, and how that having the resilience or having the there's a term that defines it. It's basically immutability of the data. How important that is nowadays. How to understand that that data is not being corrupted, so you can restore it should you have to. But if you think about the availability as well, many organizations have migrated to the cloud. Digital transformation has is being part of a huge movement to embrace the benefits of the cloud. Availability is one of them. It's elasticity. You're crunching numbers faster. You are aggregating data in data lakes, but you are relying on the ability or your ability or your employees' ability to connect to that data. So if something would happen, do we have the controls or do we have the ability to always have a persistent connection to our data? Uh, just imagine today, you just lose internet access. You as a user don't have access to, technically your availability is severed. So you are not productive. So how do you, nowadays, we carry phones. Some of them are issued by our employers. You can hop on a last case scenario is you hop on the hotspot, right? So you can access your data because your data is not in your laptop anymore or in your systems. It's somewhere else. And that data could be in a third party. So how do you ensure your organization can continue functioning? Because you move everything to the cloud, it's in some ways protected, right? It's distributed and you can access it. But if you, for some reason, as an organization, don't have the ability to access that, that could be a problem. Could be as bad as your data being encrypted or something catastrophic happening on a branch. All those things are going to impact the business. So obviously, we do some of those things on behalf of the business to protect it, but it's almost like saying you put your data on a safe that is stored by a bank, but somehow the bank is not available to open their doors. Yeah. Your data is still somewhere safe, but you needed that data to be accessed, right? And I think that could be an issue. So what type of backup plans you can devise to still be in business, to still be able to access that data? So CIA is sometimes we don't think about it. Sometimes many of us who are still, I guess, old school have it in the back of our heads, but sometimes I think we concentrate in one only and not consider the other ones as integral part of keeping the business afloat.
Yeah, I know. I've been guilty of that. I think back to some of my first interviews and like, tell me the CIA triad and what it means to you, right? That was one of the basic interview questions I always heard over and over again. But I tell you, in the last 10 to 15 years, I have put next to zero thought into the I and the A. So just seeing that post was like, okay, yeah, yeah, super important. Of course, it's important, right? No kidding. Of course, we need those things. Just again, something that kind of went by the wayside as I always would seek to better protect the data. Um, Something else I'm curious your thoughts on, and it's going back to our discussion about understanding our data and what is critical. Um, I've seen a lot of organizations out there make the assumption or dictation maybe that data classification is a security problem, right? And it might, I'm thinking more outside of just tooling, right? So I'm not talking about like, Titus or Purview or whatever. Congratulations, you own this. But the actual act of classifying data. I've seen organizations out there, oh, that's a security problem. And my opinion on that is absolutely not. Right? Because I typically found it harder for the business to buy into it when they assume it's a security problem. Hey, security guys, you deal with it. I'm curious your thoughts on that. If you agree, or if you've got different lines of thinking there.
I think it's a little bit of storytelling. If we don't have a good story why we need to classify and protect data, then we're not maybe we're failing are communicating, because we do classification all the time. We do it at home, we do it on daily. This is how we operate. At least maybe I'm a little biased because I like organizing things in my life, because it provides me some framework on how things work. I don't know about you, but I usually put my forks with the forks, and spoons with the spoons, and I put it in a specific place. Don't just drop it everywhere. So I think selling the idea why classification is important. One of the first steps is just because we want to know where our data is, what goes with what, and I think perhaps uh, selling also what is new. Right now we are, if we know that you can help the business to understand what they have, it's better. There's more visibility for them, because I can care less maybe what is sensitive for law compared to supply chain. But I think the level of detail is important, because the more we understand what is really important for logistics, is going to help them to, let's think about all the things we're doing with data analytics now. That cannot happen if data is a mess, right? So if you start putting data in a data warehouse and you start squeezing the life of um, that data and aggregating it, not only aggregating but making sense of it, maybe doing predictive maintenance, maybe do predictive projections of sales, or how to make something of some product because of the season of the time, or based on response of how well it's been selling. So all that could be happen only if your data is as accurate as possible. And 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 I think that is kind of we are here to help you to go to the next level, which is the analytics, which is the uh, think about how agentic AI could be more effective if you have your data in such a way that it's easily indexed, it's easily found, we understand where it is and how we can better analyze it. Then predictive is the next thing, and how AI can help us do that. And I think that's going to be the business differentiator for a lot of companies in the future. That is one thing that is, it's close to my heart, because I know that is go what is going to make a difference for companies today, that companies are going to stay in business for the next 10 to 20 years. So I think I would sell it as that, and I think that could also get some of the buy-in from the business to support some of the things that cybersecurity, information protection, or IT is doing on behalf of the business.
Fantastic insight, and definitely agree with everything you just said. You know, it's clear by our conversation here, you've done these things a time or two. So I'm curious. You're currently the enterprise data protection lead. Um, where did you start, and how did you get into your current position?
I'll go back a little bit. Originally from Peru, in a small town in the jungle of Peru. I would never in my wildest dreams would think that I would ever be here. So that's also testament of the opportunities this country has given me. And I've been very eager to and amazed of the opportunities I've been granted, and I've been willing to grasp. So almost 19 years ago, uh, this week actually, I came to this country holding a bachelor's degree. Went through the process to um, become a alien, legal alien. That's what the name is. And I started my work career here, not necessarily in IT, and I find my way back to IT. I was able to, again, think this country has offered me so many opportunities to go back to school. I was a recipient of a scholarship for service given by the National Science Foundation um, after I became a citizen. And that has, in some ways, I recognize that it has been kind of the catapult to opportunities. And that's why also I am very passionate about giving back. Maybe this opportunity to share with others who are listening that this country offers so many opportunities. Um, Yours could be in the path with information security. Obviously, there's a lot of opportunities in this area, but everything, even if you are a farmer, there is there is there is IT, there is analytics on that. I've seen amazing things that farmers benefit from: drone technology, scanning fields. If you go to a doctor's office, it's all related to protecting that information, patient information, maybe analytics on the lab results. So I think what I would like to say is I've been giving a lot of opportunities. I had many experiences from. Yeah, we used to work for the state of Indiana. I work for financial services, and I work now for an energy company. And it has been an amazing journey for me. And I am very humble for all the things I've been given an opportunity along lines with mentors and people who believe in me. I obviously have to put in a lot of work and put the effort because I'll be honest, not I don't claim to know everything, but if you give me a little bit of time, I'm going to either find somebody who knows or find the answer. And I think that's played a good. It's been a winning strategy, perhaps, to where I got. And I want to encourage others to do the same. Find somebody who is willing to mentor you. If you don't know the answer, be honest and say, I'm gonna work really hard to get to the answer, or maybe ask somebody who has been there before and get the best way to solve a problem. I think problem solving it's um, it's underrated, but it's also a great opportunity for people who are really eager to come up with novel solutions, perhaps, or maybe it's an old solution. They just need to be a little bit dust, uh, or it's just due diligence, perhaps. Keeping at it. I don't know. That I can only speak to my experience so far, and I will say that I see a lot of challenges, but I also see a lot of opportunities in this arena. And I encourage anybody who's listening that if you're going to be able to make it, this is the place to do it. The U.S. is yet one of the countries that has the most opportunities, especially now. I think we are the cusp of, if you're following the news, the economy is doing well. That means that there's going to be a lot of companies doing a lot of investments, growing. That also means that there are going to be a lot of targets and companies because you see how cyber criminals are targeting not only grandpas, but also companies. And companies should not be um, what's the word I want to use? Complacent. I think that's the word. Saying, "Oh yeah, well, it hasn't happened in the last 10 years. We haven't had an issue." That doesn't mean that it's going to happen. I'm not trying to sound alarmist because I want to keep my job or thinking that my job is important. But I think when everything is going well, there's always somebody's looking at you. That is necessarily has to be a nation state, but it could be a cyber. I mean, there's a lot of money being made in the dark net for holding data um, hostage, and it doesn't necessarily need to be that um, they encrypted your data. You just say, "Hey, we have access to a database that has customer data. We might release it if you don't pay." They didn't even compromise your system. They just made a copy and saved it, or they can just claim that they did it. That in itself could put you in the news. It could be bad for you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, First off, happy anniversary. You said, this week, 19 years. That's amazing.
It has gone fast.
I like to ask this question to some of my guests. So, if you could go back, so you've been here 19 years, we'll say 15, 10 to 15 years ago. So, if you can go back in time 10 to 15 years ago and talk to yourself, um, is there any advice or, tips that you give yourself 15 years ago?
I would say be bolder, be more aggressive, perhaps. Be Don't be afraid. And I think the same could be applied to learn more. Be willing to learn more, and look for some of the people who are willing to allow you to fail faster instead of being too cautious. And I think that's one of the things that sometimes maybe I feel like maybe I've been shyer in some instances because we want to be right all the time. And I think as I look for my the rest of my career, I think that's also good advice today. And learning. I think one of the things that I regret the most is not necessarily embracing learning faster. And sometimes learning things that maybe I don't think are going to be applicable to my immediate need. If I were to say to somebody right now is start looking in quantum computing or post quantum computing, it's one of the areas that I'm very interested in because I see it coming, right? Everything is AI right now, but try to use that to solve business problems. How do we help the business to be more effective or more secure? And don't forget people. Sometimes the process and the technology take place, but remember, people still going to be in the loop, and people have, and you can take it two ways. People are going to always be a risk factor, or people are going to be business enablers, maybe something in between. How do we help people to be more effective in embracing technology and then more using it more securely? I think that's sometimes the issue. And that is my 2 cents to myself. And it's maybe hearing it, me being saying this is also a reminder that I need to continue doing that as I go.
Those are great tips and definitely applicable today. I mean, I just thinking back and everything you just said about, one that really resonated with me that you said right there is being open to learning. I remember early on in my career, about 20 years ago, when cloud was just becoming a thing. I remember thinking to myself, who the heck is going to do that? Right? Who the heck is going to put their data in essentially somebody else's computer, right? That was the big value prop. Oh, it's not in your data center. I just remember who's going to do that, and I always kind of held that off with a 20-foot pole, not a 10-foot pole, very far away from me, and that hurt me. Not today, but it hurt me years ago because I was a little bit behind my peers that had already embraced it. They learned it and all that. So fantastic tips there, Hans. Definitely for yourself as a younger you, but I think anybody listening, you know, don't um, don't assume something is going to be irrelevant to you. It may be irrelevant to you today or in your current role, but things definitely change or new things come up. So that's fantastic. Hans, if folks want to connect, what's the best way to do so with you?
LinkedIn is my pretty much my only social media. I've been intentional. I started with a profile in LinkedIn mainly in 2006, I believe. I started and start connecting one at a time. I made um, a commitment to myself that I will try to be intentional who I connect with, and I think it's worked out so far with me. I mean, I'm not talking to a lot of people all the time, but one of the things I do with my LinkedIn profile is try to connect with people in the industry, people I can learn from, and also I share back.
I like it. I like it. Well, there you go, folks. For all those that are listening, if you want to connect with Hans, LinkedIn, and certainly there'll be a link with this episode, and makes it really easy for everybody. So Hans, thank you so much for joining. This has been a great episode.
Well, thank you for the invitation. I'm truly honored for your invitation and the opportunity just to share a little bit of what I do, well, myself, and just crazy thoughts I have. Some of the analogies perhaps are crazy, but to me, it makes sense to illustrate an idea how to best be that partner that the business needs to continue growing and doing so securely. And if I could have helped you to maybe think in some way how to approach that discussion with your business and your stakeholders in your company, well, that would be great to hear. If you have any thoughts, any questions, please reach out, connect with me LinkedIn. I'm always open to have conversations. Maybe we'll find a way to connect in person at the next conference.
Amazing. And I know I definitely, thought of a few new things. This has been a fantastic episode. Um, Big thank you to the audience for tuning in. Really hope that you too enjoyed and learned something today. Please tell others in your network to follow and listen. This has been another exciting episode of Guardians of the Data. See you next time. That's a wrap on another episode of Guardians of the Data. Thanks for tuning in. For show notes and more, visit guardiansofthedata.show. Guardians of the Data is made possible by support from Centro. To see how we help organizations discover and classify all of their data accurately and automatically while quickly achieving petabyte scale data protection without the fuss, please visit centro.io. Catch you next time.